I'm whispering again because my dog is just calmed down and he just fell asleep and I don't want to wake him up. Every time he hears my voice, he kind of jumps around and comes sits on in my lap, and I don't want that at the moment. I love him, but like I want a break. You see my dog is right there. You see his butt. And I have a project here, and then I also have a project right there. That's my blanket. And I'm covering myself with another project, the temperature blanket. Basically, I'm all covered in projects. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's start a survey question. Let's see. Wait, what was it? TGIF? Is it correct? Things. Is it correct? Yes. Hold on. Yes. No. Still at work. Okay, let's see. You leave quite an impression. 5 feet to be exact. Layla, Layla, la, la, Layla, Layla. Layla, la, Layla, Layla. You leave quite an impression. 5 feet to be exact. Maybe I should write full words. Thank God is Friday. Thanks to God it's Friday. That's the correct. Huh. Okay. Okay, got the survey set up, all good. My dog is sleeping away. My temperature blanket is right here, keeping me warm and cozy. I always, even though it's a sunny day, I always have cold feet. And this is a symptom of poor circulation, so I need to work out more. I need to walk more, and I am making an effort. As a matter of fact, I've been walking 6,000, you don't see it. I've been walking 6,297 steps today already, and it's not even 3 p.m. And so, hello from Chisinau, Moldova. I don't know if you heard about the country, but that is my flag. Oh, you don't see it. That is my flag, and that is my country's name. And for me, Friday has started already. The weekend had started already because I had a shorter day at work and I went to the doctor's office. I cried a lot, and now it's time to enjoy myself for the weekend. I was about to start a pity party for myself, but then I decided I had lunch And you know, guys, I don't know about you, but life is much better after I eat. So after I had lunch, I processed all the information the doctor said to me, and I decided that it's not as bad and I'm not gonna feel bad about myself. And I'm gonna pick myself up. I'm gonna have a cappuccino, which I did. I have a little bit left, but I had a cappuccino for myself. I played with my dog. I took him out. I enjoyed the sun and I actually feel a little bit better. Obviously, this doesn't change my medical information, but it changes my current reaction and I'm not upset anymore. In the past, I would have pity parties for hours and days and months. And I don't know if it ever helped me with anything, it doesn't change anything. So, and what are the plans for the weekend, you might ask? Well, let me tell you, I would love to just knit and knit and knit. However, hold on, I am knitting on a sweater for my brother and I'm trying to get some good progress this weekend. And another thing is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be very active. So my plan is to hang out and knit for a few hours, maybe like 1 hour, and then take a break. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take breaks every hour. Maybe to go outside with my dog and have him walk around because he loves that. Or maybe taking out more trash now that I'm spending a little bit more time at home. I am decluttering, and this means a lot of old things that I don't need anymore, a lot of things that need to be sorted and taken to the recycling bin or landfill. I need to understand what to do with my vacuum cleaner, if it's still repairable or if I can donate it to somebody that can use it for parts. Basically, lots of things. So I'm trying to do that in the breaks. But now all I want to do is sit in bed, do some knitting, which makes me feel productive, not feel bad about myself, and just like enjoy this afternoon. And one more thing. Thank God I had this ambition to go and find a job, and I've been working steadily for the past 7 years, and I have some savings, and I was able to go to a private doctor, and thank God I was able to work and I was able to afford all this. Because imagine having medical problems and not affording to go to the doctor. That would suck. So at least I have that good news. And it's also Friday. That's also a good news. Friday is lovely. And so that you don't have to listen to my annoying voice, I want to set up something so that we can listen to something together. Personally, I don't like the sound of my voice, so let's listen to something very nice and pleasant.
Romania, my chosen adopted home for almost 2 years now. The
Oh my
magnificent scenery, the
God.
wonderful food, the incredible people. The language,
This
however,
guy
is most definitely not one of them. Now,
living
Romanian is spoken by
ironically
around
in
25
Europe.
million people, mostly concentrated in southeastern Europe, in Romania and Moldova, with
Hold on. Stop it. So this is Romania and this part is my country. And right in the middle of this, I am currently filming from this place. That's incredible. But yes, my native language, my native tongue is Romanian, but I speak some Russian as well, and
Historical
English,
pockets of
obviously.
population also present in Ukraine, Serbia, and even Hungary. When people actually remember it exists, it's usually characterized as quite a linguistic odd duck regionally, as it's the only
Really?
Eastern Romance language in existence. This makes it the often forgotten about fifth member of the major Latin languages tree, along with Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and depending on whether or not you consider it a language, French.
Your uncle knows your
Stop.
tuna.
Stop it. Why would you?
Romanians themselves are very proud of this fact, often
Okay.
referring to themselves as a Latin island in a Slavic sea. Alongside this, the American Foreign
I had no
Services
idea.
Institute, which is in charge of educating those going into CIA coups and destabilizing fledgling nations,
What?
classifies Romanian with all the other Latin languages as Category 1, the easiest possible language
Really?
for speakers to learn.
Stop it. The what? What? The easiest language for foreigners to learn? I swear to God, all my foreign friends tell me that it is so difficult. Wait, Romanian, okay. Why is it so easy to learn, they say? I don't know about you guys, but all my friends are saying that it is so hard to learn Romanian, especially the Romanian spoken in Moldova, because we added a bunch of Russian words to it and we created our own dialect. Okay.
Tree, along with Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and depending on whether or not you consider it a language, French.
Your
Stop
uncle
it.
knows your tuna.
Stop.
Romanians themselves are very proud of this fact, often referring to themselves as
That's
a
not
Latin island in a
Romanian.
Slavic sea.
Ah, okay.
Alongside this, the American Foreign Services Institute, which is in charge of educating those
I need to Google this. What? Romanian is easy? Romanian language. Is easy to learn? What? Romanian language is extremely easy to learn, mostly because it is Latin or Romance language, which means that at the base it is very close related to English, French, Spanish, and Italian. Stop the madness. That's not what my friends are telling me. Anyways, I don't know if that is accurate. For me, it's easy because obviously it's my native language, but all my foreign friends are telling me that Bună dimineața sounds crazy, which is good morning, or Mulțumesc, which is thank you, or Te iubesc, which is I love you, or Domnișoara Cristina, which means Miss Christina. Okay, never mind. We can't argue with science, obviously.
and destabilizing fledgling nations, classifies Romanian with all the other Latin languages as Category 1, the easiest possible language for English speakers to learn. Having set aside a decent chunk of study time daily for this language for well over a year, I'm here to tell the FSI that they are just full of shit. Romanian is not easy. I don't know which underpaid intern put this on the website, but either way, I hope he got fired or worse. Ended up dating a Hello Kitty girl. It's been an entirely unwelcome surprise to find it so frustrating. Honestly, I'm convinced that unlike its Romance siblings, Romanian did not develop organically in the wild, and instead was engineered in advance
Stop.
of itself.
It was
difficult to come down to
not.
its quite frankly, utterly bizarre grammar, but before going into that,
It's
out
not
of fairness,
bizarre.
I'm first gonna list the positives of this unique language.
Okay.
The vocabulary is quite easy to acquire and retain, and in my opinion is very straightforward and literal language to construct in daily use. If you have a large vocabulary in English, you'll be able to find common Latin roots in a good amount of vocabulary. It's also easy to write and pronounce, as it's almost entirely phonetic, so spelling is simple. And when you hear
Okay.
it spoken, you know how to write it. It's also the most powerful Latin language, meaning
What
that
does
a
that
Romanian
mean?
speaker will learn the other Latin languages far faster than other Romance speakers will learn Romanian.
Okay.
But that's it. Here's where the positives end and where the Kafka nightmare of learning
Stop.
Romanian we have. Full disclosure, I've been studying
Stop it. You guys, I don't agree with that. I've tried to learn German. and I've tried to learn Hungarian. And I cried every single day going to class for Hungarian and for German. And you're telling me that Romanian is like Kafkaesque? It's not that bad. Okay, never mind. I guess everybody has their own experience.
Remaining daily for well over a year now, and in doing so, I've soared to the level of not quite A1 yet, and here's why.
Why? Genders. Genders of words.
You'll encounter are the genders. Like the majority of European languages, to the dismay of non-binary people, Romanian is a heavily gendered language. Although, annoyingly, in contrast to the other Romance languages, it's not always 100% clear what gender something is when you look at the word. Because why would it be? Also, unlike its Romance siblings, Romanian has the linguistic oddity of also including the neuter gender, which at first seems
neutral,
like
not
deal,
neuter.
but it actually is.
Neutral.
And that's quite a big deal. Because, as it turns out, Romanian being neuter isn't its own gender.
Neutral, not neuter.
Singular, but feminine when plural. And it's super common, with a ton of nouns that do this. From a linguistics perspective, this is so freaking weird that the only other languages I could find with certainty that do this are some Bantu languages from Africa like Swahili. Why this feature is so annoying has to do with pluralizing, which itself is such a miserable experience. I'd rather have my nails plucked out than have to generate window in Romanian. Masculine nouns aren't so bad. They end with a U or consonant, but also sometimes an E, I, or To increase their number, you just add an E and that's it. Feminine nouns are a completely different story. These nouns are identified by ending with an I, or ia, but also can end in E or I, just like masculine. Pluralizing feminine nouns means you'll replace the ending with an E or I, or uri, or I, or ale, or iele. Or maybe
oh my god, too many rules.
Or sometimes you change the word completely, or something else completely random. Like here. This is where the neuter nouns will really kill you, because a really huge percentage of the nouns...
A really huge percentage? Who speaks like that?
That's why. Pluralizing in this language is completely without rhyme or reason, and instead, the rules are seemingly chosen by lunatic dictators based on what random object is upset that day. Rabbits, iepuri, trees, copaci, and dogs, câini, are allowed to stay masculine no matter what, while pula, keys,
oh my god,
and cars, mașini, are forever female. But chairs, scaune, aquariums, aquari, and pens, pixuri, are punished by turning female when kept together in a group. This irregularity isn't a bug, it's a feature of the language. Tons of daily vocabulary are neuter, and because it's a
neutral or neutral, not neuter.
It's a major component of saying a basic sentence without sounding brain damaged. And if you ask Romanians why their language does this, they'll just pause and then say, oh well, it just sounds better this way. No, it doesn't. It's ridiculous that your language is based on vibes rather than actual rules, and Romanians shouldn't be constantly arguing with each other on how to correctly pluralize something. Unlike Romanian, Hungarian is strictly logical, and just based on this alone, Transylvania should be given straight back to her. Further comes to bite you in the ass with articles. Thanks to its Latin lineage, the articles are tacked onto the end of the word. So if you don't know the gender, you can't use the correct article, which adds another level of frustration when you're sitting there for 30 seconds trying to think of how to say Romani au obținut firele de cupru de la vecinii mei. The Romanians obtained the copper wires from my neighbors.
What?
Romani is masculine, but copper wires is neutral, meaning the singular masculine fir, wire, must be given the feminine plural of fire, and neighbor or vecin is allowed to stay masculine as vecini. Like, why couldn't you just have an article in front like every normal Latin language under the sun? Again, even Hungarian knows to have its articles in front of the word, and everyone bitches about it being unnecessarily complicated. But wait, it gets worse.
Basically, the entire video, this guy is gonna complain about Romanian language.
Their verbs, and Romanian is no different. It depends on the verb ending, but in general, the first person singular, yo, aka I, will end in a consonant.
And I don't know about you, but I am not in the mood to listen to a grammar. Let's listen to the history of Romania, I guess. Oh my god. I dropped everything.
One of the most iconic countries in Europe,
Okay.
and more often than not, the
Okay, let's take a break. Okay. Crisis averted. The cup did not break, it just fell off. Me and my filming skills are just...
and more often than not.
Hold on, you guys. You have to watch this.
That's only
No.
scratching the surface.
I want you to see the intro.
For sponsoring this video.
Look at the intro.
Romania.
This is Romania, and those are the videos he found about Romania. Oh my god! Brings a lot of memories for sure. We still have 2 horses in my hometown,
One of the most iconic
but still, I mean, they selected the what?
That's only scratching the surface, as this country and people have so much more than meets the eye.
Oh, thank you
Uncover
for
that,
saying
sit back,
that.
Relax, hit that subscribe button, and come with me to the past.
Okay.
The story of Romania starts some 13.8 billion years ago, when extremely hot cosmic particles started expanding and forming new things, such as atoms, stars, and galaxies. And about 40,000 years ago, the first human settlement in Romania. Throughout the early ages of human settlement in Romania, agriculture and livestock farming-based settlements became commonplace, with
Okay.
numerous cultures springing up because of this, such as the Hamanja people, who gave us some of the best examples of surviving Neolithic art today. By the Iron Age, Greek settlers seeking to get away from their cursed lands of unpaid loans and
Cursed
homoerotic
lands.
relations, took to the seas and went to settle new lands around the Black Sea coast. Upon founding a few port cities on the coast of present-day Romania, they came into contact with a people group they called the Getae. Now, we don't exactly know where the Getae came from.
The
nor how they
Getae?
got here. As far
Oh
as we
my
know,
god, you
the
guys.
Spaghetti Monster personally created them out of constant meatballs. But
What?
it is estimated that they were probably some sort of Thracians. What we do know, however, is that their neighbors esteemed them as expert archers and fierce warriors. So, that's something at least. Yet, today, in this part of the world, the Getae are better known
The
as
Getae?
the Dacians.
Ah,
When first landing in
Daci.
BC, the Dacians became the dominating power in Romania thanks to their most notable king, Burebista.
Burebista.
Tribes into a cohesive force
Burebista,
into
our
expanded
king.
territory. This expansion, however, knocked it right into another expansionist regime, the Roman Empire.
Oh, the
Dacians
Roman
and Romans
Empire.
became happy to see each other as much as a Mexican cartel and the DEA. As they both seek to expand their influence and empires, border skirmishes arose and steadily evolved into a more serious conflict, which later came to be known as the Dacian Wars. The first of
Războaiele
Dacian Wars
Dace.
was led by the Roman
Dacice.
Emperor Domitian, who cockily marched the Roman army over the Danube into Dacia, thinking the war would be a piece of cake, only to be ambushed and lose 2 of his legions. Yet, that did not stop Rome from coming in again a year later. After the empire recuperated its army and marched their asses across the Danube again, the two fought multiple battles. Sometimes the Romans would win, other times not so much. Ultimately, every nerd's favorite empire proclaimed victory, and a tense peace followed, where the Dacians promised to behave themselves and pay tribute to Rome, filling their pockets with precious gold, silver, iron, and whatever the ancient European civilization considered their equivalent of Bitcoin at the time. However, after some time, the Dacian king Decebal decided that if the Romans
Decebal.
wanted their
Oh
own
my
money, they
god.
could get it themselves instead of mooching off from the Dacian
King
people. And
Decebal.
instead of sending their precious gold to Rome, it would be better off if they spent it on fortifying Dacia's own borders and defenses. Another one of Decebal's IQ 200 ideas for improving Dacia's finances and making some extra coin was to raid and pillage the border towns in the nearby Roman provinces, which absolutely in no way whatsoever could ever backfire. It backfired. By
Oh
418,
no,
Dacia disobedience
Decibel.
had gotten a little too cute, and after suffering one too many raids, Rome's new emperor, Trajan, crossed into Dacia and made his way to its capital, burning every village, field, and anything and
Wait,
everything
what was the
resembling
capital
a
back then?
Dacian.
Was it
The two armies
Suceava?
clashed fiercely, inflicting heavy losses to one another. However, nothing would be able to stop Trajan's fury. Two Dacian wars later, despite the Dacians putting up a good fight, Dacia fell, and Decibel, alongside several of his nobles, committed suicide as Roman armies marched across your previous empire. And so, starting from 106 AD, Dacia became a Roman province. The war with Rome completely destroyed its infrastructure, and many roads, farms, bridges, and cities had to be rebuilt. And seeing as Trajan had enslaved and deported potentially up to 500,000 Dacians, Dacia needed to be repopulated as well. Thus, the residents from all over the Roman Empire were moved in to work on the previously devastated by war lands and rebuild the province from scratch. With their arrival, the new migrants in Dacia also brought their Latin language,
Migrants
effectively Romanizing
in
Dacia and
Dacia.
making it an indispensable Roman province. Now,
Basically,
after the Romans
we
took over
mixed.
Dacia, you'd think there would finally be peace and prosperity, right? Fat chance. This is the history of Romania, after all. Soon after Dacia's integration into Rome, raids from barbarian, Germanic, and free Dacian tribes became a regular occurrence, and the soldiers essentially had to play whack-a-mole with the amount of raids they were getting. By the late 3rd century,
Whack-a-mole.
this ultimately became too much for the Roman army to handle, and they had no other choice but to pull out of the province. Yet, despite only being around for 150 years, the Latin language stuck around for good. And to the pleasure or dismay of many, Romania was canonized as a family member of the Latin-speaking world. However, back in the medieval ages, finding out whom you were related to wasn't the easiest task. Not because they didn't have good bookkeeping, nor the knowledge of genealogy, but because they didn't have MyHeritage, baby!
Your what? Oh, he's doing a sponsorship. So turns out that in Eastern Europe, DNA and Me or 23 or the other services are not as popular, but MyHeritage seems to be popular. I had no idea. Or at least a lot of influencers push this service in Eastern Europe or in Central Europe as the right or a better fit for people living in this region, better than 23andMe or Ancestors.com.
Who would have thought I actually even have 13% Iberian in me? Also, if you happen to find any old photos of relatives, MyHeritage can repair, colorize, enhance them, or even animate them.
It gives you who are your relatives, like your ancestors, and he is hypothesizing that his ancestor is the dictator Ceausescu.
For the next
Okay,
several hundred years,
let's
starting
see.
from the early 4th century, the territories of modern-day Romania became the hottest new destination for various groups of nomadic raiders and future would-be settlers, such as the Goths, Gepids, Huns, Avars, Bulgars, and Slavs, who all either went through the region, as your typical raider does, or settled it. During this time period, modern-day Romanian territories were either under the control of the Avars or Bulgars. At the same time, early Christianity also began to spread throughout the land, as Byzantine missionaries went through the barbarian lands, attempting to put them on the righteous path of believing in Jesus Christ and substituting meat for fish on Fridays. Throughout the early medieval ages, Romania as we know it today was slowly starting to form, as people from all across Europe and afar entered the country's territory and began to intermingle with the Latin-speaking populace of the previously Dacian lands. With these migrations, the Romanized language, culture, traditions spread to all parts of the future country's territories. By the end of the 9th century, everyone's favorite people, the Hungarians, made it to the Carpathian Basin and steadily began to conquer Transylvania. In typical Hungarian fashion, they knew that Transylvania would be great if it wasn't for all those pesky Romanians running around acting like they owned the place.
Oh my
In the
god.
11th century,
I love the
King
humor.
invited Germanic peoples from what are today the Low Countries to settle in the fertile farmlands of Transylvania in exchange for protecting the easternmost frontier of the Hungarian border. Although they were tasked with protecting the kingdom, they nevertheless failed quite miserably at the one job they had when the Mongols showed up in the mid-13th century and ravaged
The Mongol, the Mongols,
at a children's playground.
the Mongolians, I think.
Wallachia succumbed to Europe's second favorite group of people, the Bulgarians. The province spent several hundred years from the late 7th century until the late 10th century under the Bulgarian Empire, until Wallachia too became an on and off vassal state of the Hungarian crown. This vassalage lasted up until King Bessarab I thoroughly trounced the Hungarian army at the Battle of Posada in the mid-14th century. Upon mogging the
I'm not gonna lie to you, I did not know any of these. Or maybe I read it when I was a teenager and I forgot. It's so many details, like, come on.
Hungarians or Bulgarians needed another lesson to be taught on who's a real Sigma male here. He also established the use of Church Slavonic in the Romanian branch of Orthodox Christianity, which forever doomed Romania in the effort of beating the being Slavic allegations. During this time, Moldova was also
Moldova!
at first as a Hungarian vassal state meant to protect the kingdom's easternmost border. Yet, in the mid-1300s, the voivode Zoltán I the army of the Hungarian king Lajos I, and so secured Moldovan independence that turned it into, at this time, the second independent Romanian principality.
Moldova!
You know, this is the Balkans, and no one can really have nice things. And so, the 1400s, an existential threat to Europe's existence emerged. The Ottoman Empire.
Ottoman Empire.
Inevitable march into Christian Europe. As the Turks were about as popular as
Turks. I hate that he doesn't pronounce the words Turks. Why he says Turks?
The Muslim invaders. As Wallachia fell to Ottoman influence in the beginning of the 1400s, not long after, Wallachia's circumstances produced perhaps the most famous and lovable Romanian of all, Prince Vlad III, aka Vlad Țepeș.
Oh, the Impaler!
Into the kebabs, the Impaler.
Vlad Țepeș.
In the Ottoman royal courts to ensure his father Vlad II, the voivode of Wallachia, would stay loyal to the Turks. As an adult, he was sent back to Wallachia to rule in the hopes that he'd be a well-behaved little lad who would sit down, shut up, eat his kufte, and pay the Ottomans their yearly tribute.
Kufte.
Instead, upon reaching Wallachia, Vlad invited the Turks to fist themselves with a pineapple. This, of course, didn't sit well with the Ottoman Sultan. So the Ottomans sent an incursion force into Wallachia to put down his rebellion. However, upon reaching Wallachia, Vlad made sure that the
I hate that he says Wallachia. It is Wallachia. V.
Shish kebab people he had impaled from a local town. While this scared the ever-living Christ out of the Ottomans, it ultimately did very little to end the Turkish domination of Wallachia. While all this was happening in Wallachia, another great historical figure was rising in Moldova, Stefan III.
Ooh, Stefan cel Mare! Oh, hold on.
Ottomans and Poles on all sides. Unsurprisingly, his reign was marked by non-stop battles. The Battle of Vaslui was deemed as his crowning achievement, where he managed to defeat an Ottoman army 3 times larger than his own and gained the title of Champion of Christ from the Pope because of that. Stefan would only end up losing 2 of his 50 battles, which is even more impressive considering the madman was usually outnumbered. He's also remembered for erecting a monastery for each victory, many of which are still some of Romania's most beloved sites to visit.
That is true, actually.
While alive, Stefan excelled at enduring Moldovan autonomy like Vlad in Wallachia, and once he died, Moldova, like Wallachia, fell under Ottoman dominion. The 3 principalities held out against the Ottomans as long as possible, but by the time the Kingdom of Hungary lost the Battle of Mohacs against the Turks in the 16th century, and with it lost Transylvania, all 3 of the principalities became vassal states of the Ottoman Empire, albeit with some degree of autonomy. However, in the beginning of the 17th century, Prince Mihai II of Wallachia managed, through both adept political maneuvering and decisive battle victories, to unite the three principalities under his rule. Although it was only for under a year until he was taken out by the Turks and Habsburgs.
Mihai?
A for effort. However,
Wasn't it
this
Mircea cel
unification was
Bătrân?
pivotal to the Romanian identity. From now on, whichever principality you lived in, the Romanian dream of unification was ignited in its people's hearts. Unlike in other parts of the Balkans, Ottoman influence in Transylvania was rather short-lived. After the Ottomans did one-too-many invasions into Europe and suffered a devastating defeat at the Battle of Vienna, Austria was able to recover much of its lost Hungarian lands and integrate them under its own crown. From this point on, the culture of the Romanians in Transylvania took a decisive Austro-Hungarian turn, while Wallachia and Moldova, still under Turkish control, went a different path. As time went on, the Ottomans decided they couldn't really be bothered to properly govern Wallachia and Moldavia. I mean,
Moldova.
have you seen Craiova and Vasilui? I rest my case, Your Honor. So, by the late 17th century, they sent the Phanriots, Orthodox Greeks from Constantinople, to have someone rule in their place who they could trust as their voivodes of Moldavia and Wallachia. The idea with this governance was that the Orthodox locals would respond better to taking orders from rulers who were Orthodox themselves, rather than from some guy in Istanbul who wears an onion for a hat and has meat made out of pork as his kryptonite. While this added some Greek influence to Romanian culture, the Phanriots nevertheless were pretty uniformly despised for their corruption and exploitation of the local populations. During one of the numerous Russo-Turkish wars in the 1700s, when Russian forces marched into the Ottoman territories of Wallachia and Moldavia,
Moldova, not Moldavia.
someone powerful was finally coming to rescue them from those bothersome Greeks. This particular installation of the Russo-Turkic Wars dragged on until the early 1800s, until the Russian victory led to the Peace Treaty of Bucharest, ending the conflict. As thanks for all their hard work of stopping the Turks, Moscow demanded the annexation of the entirety of Wallachia and Moldova, although they ended up only being granted the eastern half of Moldova, which later became
Where I live now.
Soon after, the Russians established both Moldova and Wallachia as protectorates. Protectorates were still technically under Ottoman domain.
Protectorates.
This governance was widely welcomed by the Romanians because, hey, how bad could rule under the Russians be? Am I right? Right? Well, it was bad. Shockingly, the Russians ended up being more corrupt and oppressive than their predecessors.
Oh,
and public
no.
discontent with their new overlords quickly started to grow. By the mid-1800s, Romanians in each principality faced increasingly subjugated existences under either Russian, Ottoman, or Hungarian rule. And so, educated Romanians were sending their children to study in the West. Naturally, being Romanian, their instinct was to get the hell out of Romania as quickly as possible, with France being the number one choice of
I love this guy's
destination.
humor.
Later on came back eager to share their brand new Western revolutionary ideas regarding independence, nationalism, and a unified cultural identity. And so, inspired by various European revolutions making the waves around the mid-1800s, in particular in France, the Romanians, fed up with being pushed around by Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans, and the Russians, initiated revolutions in each principality to liberate Wallachia, Moldova, and Transylvania, and to achieve unification. The Turks, Russians, and Hungarians proceeded to react exactly to these uprisings as you'd expect, and each revolution was brutally put down almost immediately. However, despite the brutal suppression of the people, the romantic ideas of nationalism and unification truly took a firm hold in the public imagination, and from now on, the Romanian identity was synonymous with the unification of its three principalities. Throughout the same time period, the Russians and Turks yet again went to war for the millionth time, with Russia finally withdrawing its troops from Romania after France and Great Britain threatened to declare war on it if it didn't leave the country. With Russia's defeat, Romania took advantage of the opportunity to petition its ally France to support its unification. The Paris Congress decided to allow for the creation of the United Principalities of Moldova and Wallachia. However, the two would have separate governments, separate rulers and separate legislative bodies. Which, what the did that even mean? You can be united, but you have to be separate.
Like a federation,
let's say
probably.
no in that case. God damn. In response, Wallachia and Moldova simply elected the same man as the ruling prince of both countries, Alexandru Ioan Cuza. And
Alexandru Ioan Cuza.
And the Romanian United Principalities were created. A minor unification, if you will, and still technically under the Ottoman domain, but a unification nonetheless. Luckily, in the late 1800s, during yet again another Russo-Turkish war, the Turks got fully pushed back to Constantinople and were pushed out of Romania for good. In response, Romania promptly declared its independence, and finally the great powers officially recognized the Moldovan-Wallachian Union as the independent state of Romania. And so, in May 1881, at the coronation of King Carol I, the Kingdom of Romania was born. Romania now had Wallachia, Moldova, and Dobruja.
Yay, Moldova, Dobroja.
Modernization and economic growth. However, soon enough, World War I came knocking.
By the way, I think, hold on, let me check. So when this unification took place, I was lucky enough to have one of my ancestors born, and he made Romanian papers, a birth certificate, a marriage certificate, and on the birth certificate it was written like born in the great Principality of Romania. And I was lucky enough that based on this document of one of our ancestors, I was able to claim citizenship, and I got citizenship from Romania. And it took me, I think, about 2 years to go through the entire process, to apply, to prove that one of my ancestors was born and he had papers printed in the great Romanian Principality. And after I went through the entire process, and it took more than 2 years, and then I went to the Romanian embassy here in Chisinau, and I swore, I took the oath, to act as a good, proper Romanian. I almost cried because it reminded me of all my grandfathers and grandmothers who were born during the Great Romania. They traveled a lot to the Romanian territory and to Wallachia and to Dobroja. They have relatives there. We still have them, but we are, distanced. We are distant relatives. Nothing crazy.
King Carol was of inbred German stock. Apparently, he had signed a secret treaty of alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary back in 1883, which the political elites who wanted to ally with the Entente, along with their forever BFF France, were absolutely thrilled to discover. As a compromise, they decided to try neutrality. Ultimately, France promised that if Romania allied with them, it would be fully united with Transylvania, Bukovina, and Bessarabia. And so, Romania entered the war on the side of the Entente, only for it to be overcome by the Central Powers and being forced to surrender massive chunks of territory to the likes of Hungary and Bulgaria. Luckily, they were able to re-enter the war on the Entente side literally 1 day before Germany surrendered. And so, with such cheese tactics, Romania emerged on the winning side and got to share in the spoils of victory. That's right! Carving up Hungary, baby! You get a piece of Hungary. And you get a piece of Hungary. Everyone gets
I should not laugh. I mean,
alongside getting back everything it lost previously due to its brainiac move of attacking a far larger enemy, the country also got much more. By the end of the First World War, the victors decided to give Austria-Hungary, who they saw as responsible for starting this whole pointless war in the first place, the spanking of a lifetime, via treaty after treaty after another treaty after, you guessed it, a treaty? Well, some of the post-war treaties are a bit controversial, to say the least. Romania managed to emerge a clear winner. From now former Hungarian territory, it gained Transylvania, as well as some of Banat, Krishana,
Maramuresh, and Bessarabia, where I live now. Moldova is also known as Bessarabia.
Romania achieved full unification and Greater Romania was born. Finally, a centuries-long dream of the possibility of a distinct, cohesive, and united cultural identity without the forced influence of a foreign power would now be within the people's grasp, and the people rejoiced. However, as great as it was for the Romanian cultural identity, the political situation wasn't so stable, with this time period being marked by ethnic conflicts, constant changes in the government, and the rise of fascist and authoritarian movements. In the decade between 1930 and 1940 alone, Romania experienced 25 different governments, with the recently launched Iron Guard, Romania's most prominent fascist party, contributing heavily to this instability. The Iron Guard, also known as the Legion of the Archangel Michael, was virulently anti-capitalist, anti-communist, anti-democratic,
Basically,
and
anti
anti-Western
everything.
ideals, specifically those annoying parts about human rights. They presented themselves to the people as a pious Orthodox peasant championing alternative to the out-of-touch corrupt
What?
elites and capitalized on Romania's, at the time, rabid anti-Semitism to recruit by promising to take care of all those jobs.
Hello,
They
Shetika
had
Woods,
no qualms whatsoever
crocheting.
about utilizing
Good morning,
numerous
blessings to
sanctions,
you as
bombings,
well.
and other acts of terrorism against the state to get their way, and made no secret of their aim to ally themselves with Nazi Germany as soon as possible.
I'm listening a bit of history to refresh my memory because next week I have to interpret in a conference about historical facts. So I'm listening to refresh.
The best case scenario was that only Bessarabia would be taken by the Soviets. And so, of course, they proceeded to enter full-on panic mode. While Romania wanted to remain loyal to France, its longtime protector and benefactor, due to being surrounded by Nazis on one side and the Soviet Union on the other, King Carol II decided to remain neutral and hope for the best. This worked just as great as it did in World War I, and once again, big chunks of its territory were quickly occupied by the likes of Hungary, the Soviet Union, and Bulgaria. The public outrage over the loss of territory, specifically Transylvania, to Hungary, led to Carol's abdication and exile in September of 1940, and his young son, Mihai, was crowned in his place. However, during this time, the real power in Romania actually belonged to General Ion Antonescu, who had been
Ion, Generalul Ion.
Carol II, in hopes he would rule with the Iron Guard and secure some popular support. Instead, Antonescu crushed the Iron Guard and seized total power with Adolf Hitler's approval. Once secure in his position of absolute power, he then proceeded to go on such a killing spree against Jews, gypsies, foreigners, dissidents, and political enemies that even the Nazis looked over at what he was doing and told him that he should probably turn it down a bit and maybe, just maybe, try being a little less cruel. Similarly to one other country in the Balkans.
Which one?
By now, absolute dictator, officially brought Romania into the war on the Axis' side in 1940 and proceeded to provide equipment, oil, and massive amounts of troops to the Eastern Front. Romania then proceeded to get decimated by the Allied bombings, incapacitate its valuable oil fields, as well as by the land invasions conducted by the Soviets. While fighting on the Eastern Front, they lost more than 200,000 men. Rather than coming to aid its ally, Hitler instead focused on exporting as much fuel and food out of Romania as possible to feed and fuel his armies, leaving Romania to lay in a state of chaotic limbo until August 1944, when King Mihai decided to change his country's trajectory by force. By this time, the upcoming Soviet conquest of Romania was just a matter of time, as they were already at Iași's door. The common knowledge was that Germany would lose. Romania was being destroyed and its people being slaughtered. Throughout the war, the now 22-year-old King Mihai had been forced to sit on the sidelines as a mindless figurehead, sitting there like a Ken doll for ceremonial purposes, while Antonescu's government actually led the country. However, Mihai had been meeting secretly with the many secret pro-Allied politicians, army officers, security officials, and other elites. So, in August 1944, Mihai called Antonescu in for a private meeting and informed him that from here on, Romania would join the Allies and withdraw all troops from the Axis alliance, or else. General Antonescu refused, and so in marched Mihai's loyalist troops to arrest him, while the rest of his loyal security and military apparatus quickly and successfully enacted a full-on coup. King Mihai then proceeded to give a radio broadcast in which he announced Romania's alliance with the Allied powers. To do that, he had to sign an armistice of unconditional surrender to the USSR, whose terms were almost unilaterally dictated by the Soviet Union only. From then on, Romania was a part of the Allied powers, and even joined in with the Soviet army in April 1945 as they marched towards Germany to secure the Allied victory. Ultimately, Romania emerged in the winning team, just as it did in World War I, by again realizing nothing else but cheese tactics. Unfortunately, the whole letting the USSR dictate the terms of the armistice meant that from now on, they were to be occupied by the Soviet Union as a form of protection, and from that point on, the Soviets were in charge of absolutely everything.
Yep,
In hopes of attracting
that's
Western
Moldova.
for what he knew Romania's fate under a Soviet occupation would be, King
Oh,
Mihai
thank you,
appointed a coalition
Gautier.
government. The Soviets installed
I get my nails done here in Chisinau. My nail technician or nail specialist is a Russian lady, and she works very nicely. These are my natural nails. They're just, oh, sorry. They're just covered with acrylic gel so that they don't break because I bite on them and they break, but she covered them very nicely. The problem is, hold on, the problem is that it is very painful. I cry every single time I go. It hurts here at the cuticles, and it hurts when I put my fingers under the lamp. It hurts so bad, I cannot tell you. And every time she tells me that it's going to get better, just like press, and wait, and it will pass. It's always so painful, I cannot tell you. But thank you. Do you also do your nails?
Moscow from essentially kidnapping millions of its citizens and constructing an artificial non-Romanian identity for Moldova, a territory that was an essential pillar in the construction of the Romanian cultural and historical identity. Almost immediately upon the installation of the pro-Soviet government, King Mihai refused to sign or support any other decrees, effectively going on strike. Groza's response was to exile and abolish the monarchy completely. And so, Romania stepped into its socialist era. A few years later, after Groza seized power, he was replaced by Gheorghe Gheorghiu, who, in contrast, wasn't a hardline Stalinist and focused on
Stalinist. Why he's speaking with such a deep English accent?
A bit of Western development and economic aid. Yet, by the mid-60s, Danish kicked the butt, possibly from polonium poisoning in his feet, or maybe even from the chunks of Romanian mines radioactive uranium kept on his desk as a paperweight. I prefer to think its cause was the uranium, because that's absolutely hilarious. However, what's not hilarious was his successor, who was none other than Nicolae Ceausescu. Believe it or not, at first, Ceausescu was actually quite well liked. It helped that he built upon Gheorghiu Dej's policies of relative independence from the Soviet Union, even being the only Warsaw Pact country who refused to participate in the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, even publicly condemning it. Nevertheless, after Ceausescu came into office for some time, Romania's economy boomed, which led the West to hopefully assume that Ceausescu's leadership would be more akin to Joseph Tito's Yugoslavia.
Oh my god, you guys, I don't know if you follow.
But after Mr. Nicolae visited China and North Korea in the early 70s, he came back with some ideas for his country straight out of his citizens' wildest nightmares. First of all, from now on, they were out with the old in with, meaning countless traditional and historic neighborhoods and even entire towns were destroyed to construct great commie blocks as far as the eye could see. Tens of thousands of people were forcibly displaced, while any sort of localized control over anything was abolished, and anything with any sort of chain of command was centralized to Bucharest. Because with a country this size that needs 10 hours by train to reach one big city from the other, who needs a decentralized nation? Ceausescu's trip instilled in him the need for a dramatic increase in Romania's population, so he initiated the decree 770, an absolute draconian law on family planning to ensure the maximum number of children from each woman as possible. Abortion was outlawed, monthly gynecological checks were mandatory, birth control was illegal, and childless couples had to pay an additional monthly tax of at least 10% of their incomes. As a result, this generation was by far the largest in Romanian history, and colloquially was named the Căței. And unfortunately, a great deal of these children were born to families who had almost no way to care for them, which subsequently forced thousands of kids to live as orphans on the streets and sewers, or in rundown, understaffed, underfinanced orphanages where abuse and mistreatment was more than just common.
Oh my
Ceausescu's trip to
God.
China and North Korea also got him thinking about how he could most properly get the love and attention he deserved. So he made for himself the most creepy and pervasive personality cult possible, in which he was the genius of the Carpathians, an all-loving, infallible father, and the population of Romania were his children. His wife, Elena, was also truly a feminist icon, near illiterate yet somehow obtained a PhD in chemistry, and she was a loving mother of the nation, yet still a working woman and brilliant scientist. Barbie had nothing on her, and unless you wanted to be thrown into custody of the Securitatea and disappear like tens of potentially hundreds of thousands of others, you toe these lines, or else. Shockingly, with policies like these, it turned out the genius of the Carpathians actually knew nothing about running anything, and anyone who knew better and spoke out got a bullet to the head. And so Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu single-handedly reshaped Romania from the ground up. Bucharest today is almost unrecognizable compared to 100 years ago, as a massive earthquake struck it in 1977 and gave the Ceausescus the golden opportunity to demolish half the city to construct the communist dystopia we know today. While on paper Romania's economy was technically growing, its living standards still remained the lowest in Europe, save maybe Albania. Due to the earlier good behavior in the eyes of the West, Ceausescu had racked up debts with the IMF worth $13 billion by the late 70s. Thus, in the early 1980s, Ceausescu decided it was time to reorganize Romania's economy with the single purpose of paying off its debts. From now on, anything and everything of value and use would be sold off for foreign hard currency used to pay off the debt. Domestically, oil, gas, and food were severely rationed and prices of daily necessities skyrocketed. In just a few years, the standard of living, which was already not great, fell by 40%. And there were massive cuts to every program of government spending.
Oh my
Although
God, that
these
sounds
cuts didn't
horrible.
affect the Vandy construction project of insanity in Bucharest, the People's Palace. Ceausescu knew that Romania, at the time one of the poorest countries in Europe, needed the biggest, heaviest building in the world to be the seat of its government. Thousands of volunteers likely died while constructing this socialist dystopian eyesore that has over 1,000 rooms, 20 kilometers
Bă, tu
of secret
poporului sau
tunnels,
ce-o fi?
18 stories, 9 above ground and 9 below. While Romania's people were starving, having been put on low-calorie diets so more food could be exported, the Ceausescus decided to allocate 2 billion euros to the construction and sourcing of quality materials such as white marble, crystal, and luxurious textiles. Anyone who suggested even mildly that perhaps some of this money could be used to feed, clothe, or heat the starving populace could be either shot dead on the street, as an example, or disappeared without a word to their family. Credit where credit is due, technically, the plan worked, and Romania paid off its debts by the end of the 80s. But shockingly, the Romanian population was getting pretty darn mad. By this time, protests were already starting to spring up here and there, and had to be subdued by the Securitatea, Romania's secret police. However, this only continued to fuel the fire. In 1989, riots began when in Timișoara, the Securitatea tried to arrest a popular Hungarian priest who openly opposed the demolition of churches and forced deportation of villagers into more urban areas. Instead of giving him up, massive crowds formed alongside his residence, blocking the police from entering. Initially, this protest was simply over a single issue. However, after decades of cruel mistreatment, more and more people started to join in, and the protest quickly became against the government itself. Soon, Crowds began to riot, and the army was called in and then proceeded to massacre hundreds of civilians. In a desperate PR stunt, Nikolai organized a mass rally thinking it would garner him support, but instead, the crowd heckled and jeered him.
Aceste mare manifestări populare din București, considerând aceasta
These are such historical moments. I cannot believe it that they have it on film.
The police and military to attack the rally attendees as well. Within a matter of days, civilians all over the country rose up against the regime, and even the army switched sides. The Ceausescus tried to flee, but were subsequently arrested and immediately put on trial for crimes against humanity, where they were found guilty and were executed live on television on Christmas Day 1989. After the Ceausescus were dealt with, Romania decided to embrace capitalism. Like any post-Soviet state, the 90s were a very rocky transition period for Romania, and it struggled to find its footing when immediately transitioning from a centralized and pre-planned economy to the free market. Unsurprisingly, corruption and inefficiency plagued its economic prospects, and unfortunately, it was quite a bumpy ride, with its politics often more resembling playground fights than true political discourse. The country wasn't really able to truly start shaking away its past ghosts of communism until it started to fully integrate within the EU, first by joining NATO in 2004, and then by joining the EU proper in 2007. However, since joining the EU, it's safe to say that Romania is one of Europe's major success stories, as its dramatic and consistent economic progress can attest. Its quality life, income level, and expected life expectancy have all risen.
Oh, hello, Peter.
Quite literally.
TGIF means thank God it's Friday. And the dog is right there. I took him outside. We played. I had to wait for him to get tired. So now I can enjoy. And next week I have to be an interpreter to a conference based on historical facts, and I'm listening to a refresher on history of Romania.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the subscribe button or even become a member like these wonderful people. And don't forget to go and check out My Heritage and find out a little bit more about your own family history. My name is Janos, and you've watched Living Around a Clean Europe.
It's incredible. It's incredible how a guy, hold on, where is he from? He has a channel called Living Ironically in Europe, but he is from where? Where is he from? Tuck, tuck, tuck. It doesn't say where he's from. From his accent, I can tell he's from Eastern Europe somewhere. I just don't know where. So he posted the history of Romania. I see that he has a lot of videos about life in Eastern Europe, life in the Balkans, Yugoslavia, history of Hungary, Romanian TV. The drink that defined the Balkans? What drink is that? Jagermeister?
It's something we all love to drink. Be it after a rough day of work, after a bad breakup,
Is it
or
Jager?
just for the hell of it. Alcoholics don't run my life. They drive. And everyone has stories about getting pissed drunk and waking up in the middle of nowhere and then subsequently embarking on the long walk of shame back home with all their money and dignity gone. And although no good story ever starts with a salad, but instead...
Wait, it can't be Jagermeister. It has to be Rakiu, like the hard spirit, which is equivalent of vodka. Let's
almost
see.
exclusively with a few glasses of beer, there is a dark side to it. In the Balkans in particular, alcohol is a huge part of the culture, for better or worse, and it has played a major role in developing the region to what it is today. But how exactly did it do that, and what is the role of alcohol in the Balkans? To understand this deep-seated, culturally ingrained love of the drink, we have to go way back to the dawn of humanity itself. For the entirety of humanity's existence, we loved getting drunk. And there's growing evidence for the theory that the reason agriculture was developed was so it'd be less work for us to get ourselves drunk whenever we want to. If you've ever spent more time than an hour in
Seriously?
the Balkans, this theory will seem incredibly obvious. In fact, it's entirely likely that the Balkans is one of the first places wine grapes were properly cultivated in Europe, with proper evidence for wine production itself in Greece 6,500 years ago. The Romans built upon the Greeks' knowledge and continued this cultivation by planting their own varietals of grapes wherever they could. During the Great Migration in the 6th century, the Slavic tribes moving in further cemented the importance of wine to the region, as the formerly pagan Slavs were influenced by the Byzantine Empire to convert to Christianity. They needed a steady supply of Christ's blood to consume along with his flesh, aka bread, for communion rituals. As wine takes a very time and labor-intensive method to produce, this meant monasteries had to source wine from cultivated vineyards. Both the churches and monasteries themselves got into the action, and over time, each country cultivated many of their own unique regional varieties, many of which can't grow anywhere else but their home turf. While beer and various honey-based meads were also popular, the drink of choice for hundreds of years remained wine. Then, in the mid-1300s, the Ottomans started moving into the Balkans, and within less than 200 years, the Balkan Peninsula was mostly under their control. Being Muslim, the Turks weren't so keen on alcohol production, and weren't so keen to preserve the Christians' fondness of alcohol. But to the Christians, wine was unnegotiable, as the importance of wine
Non-negotiable, not
unnegotiable. In the
unnegotiable.
Bible, everyone drank it, with meals and especially among friends, as a way to cement alliances between believers. Jesus himself had such a strong love of wine that his accusers even called him a fat drunk. Wine was also an essential part of worship in both the Old and New Testaments, being offered to God as sacrifice, and it kept a permanent presence in temples of worship. It was in so much of God's special favor that upon joining the kingdom of God after death, according to Isaiah 25:6, you would be greeted with an abundance of wine. Most crucially, wine played a major role in the Last Supper, the last time Jesus ate with his disciples before being arrested. Jesus held up a glass of wine and told his followers to drink from it, as it is a cup of his blood, and that his blood would be shed so that all of humanity's sins would be forgiven. Along with consuming bread to represent his body, this ritual became known as the Eucharist. This ritual was the oldest and most distinctive form of Christian worship, and it celebrated the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and helped secure the eternal salvation of your soul. Mom, I think you've had enough to drink for tonight. Nonsense, Vlad. Mommy is securing her eternal salvation. The Ottomans, on the other hand, didn't really see it that way, and instead found it to be rather creepy, and decided to stamp out this weird ritualized cannibalism by prohibiting mass alcohol production. They created special troops with the singular task to seek out and destroy vineyards, only allowing certain churches and monasteries to continue their production for church ritual purposes. As wine grapes require a bit of space and care to grow, it really couldn't be done in secret, and so the Ottomans decimated wine production in the Balkans. Coupled with this was a 17th century onset of the Little Ice Age, when Europe's climate became colder and wetter. So, in addition to the Turks being antisocial killjoys, climate-wise, much of the Balkans was now unsuitable for growing wine on mass scale, and production went way down. However, instead of the intended side effect of making haram cannibal blood juice extinct, the Ottomans' efforts actually had the opposite effect. Alcohol, wine in particular, now became integral to the preservation of the Balkan Christian identity, as it became intrinsically tied to dutiful Christian opposition to the Turks' foreign occupation. The Turks did everything they could to Turkify the locals, while Christians, like Jews, were people of the book. Like Muslims, they weren't seen as equal under the law and had to pay a special jizya tax to the state. Most horribly, the Ottomans had the Devshirme practice, of seizing the children of Christians, forcibly converting them, and forcing them to work in the empire, which did nothing but create massive resentment among the populace, who saw it as targeted religious discrimination, as Muslims were exempt from having their children kidnapped. While technically Christians were allowed to practice their faith, in practice, however, the church was often used as a hostage, as in, obey us or we'll destroy your churches and monasteries and publicly burn your saints as relics to ash, which is something that Serbs found out firsthand after the Banat uprising in the late 1500s, in which they used the image of Saint Sava, the founder of the Serbian Orthodox Church, on their flags in battle as a symbol of their resistance. In response, the Sultan ordered Saint Sava's relics to be burned in order to suppress future rebellions and demoralize the Serbs. Unsurprisingly, this had the exact opposite effect, and instead, the Serbs' resolve to preserve their national and thus religious identity only intensified. And the story is basically the same throughout all the Balkan Christian regions. As the Christian communities turned to the local churches to preserve and perpetuate their local traditions and culture, wine production for the Eucharist became a fundamental pillar of the cultural boundary between the Christians, us, versus the Muslim, them. And as the Balkans steadily fell more and more to Ottoman control, the Christian church's centralized cultivation of wine became more and more central to the preservation of the Christian identity, in spite of the onslaught of the Muslim hordes trying to destroy the Christian way of life. Because while they may take our money, our saints, even our children, they at least can't take away the salvation of our souls. But even so, alcoholism is bad, okay? You should always take care of your body. And there's no better way to do so other than with Manscaped, baby! You all knew it was only a question of time when I too will start talking about shaving myself down there. And there's a... Today, the Ottomans' efforts to stamp out...
Oh my god, to be very honest, I am so tired of listening to this guy. I mean, the entire video is so interesting, so entertaining. Okay, let's listen a little bit more. And then, because I'm curious, which drink defined the Balkans? Was it wine? Or was it rakiu?
Luckily, however, by the 17th century, something was ready to take its place. It turned out that in this new colder, damper weather, plums and other stone fruits
Rakiu, okay.
needed far less space to grow than grapevines and required next to no maintenance. Couple this with the spreading technology of distillation and you get the emergence of distilled plum spirits. Now, this was a far more potent delivery of alcohol than wine could ever hope to be. A single glass of the stuff contained even more alcohol than over an entire bottle of wine. And compared to wine, spirits were far less taxed and far easier to both produce and sell.
The distillery.
We're talking about the emergence of rakia, baby!
Okay, we call it rakiu in Moldova. Yep, that's the exact effect. It's very strong. And I tasted a lot of it from when I traveled in Hungary. When I lived in Hungary, I traveled to Slovakia, Slovenia, Austria. I haven't been to Czech Republic, but you know, the neighboring countries of Hungary. And their version of rakia is much weaker than what we drink in Moldova. In Moldova, if it's 45 degrees spirits, that's too weak. Like it's 45, it's not enough. I think it's 60 or 65% spirits.
Now, the word rakia itself is a collective term for fruit brandy made throughout the entire region of the Balkans. Maybe you've heard it called by other names like palinka or tsuika or cognac or even slivovitz. Its alcohol content is typically around 40%, but in practice it can be much higher. We're talking about moonshine here, and if you're already gonna make it shine and risk God knows how many years in prison, might as well make it so potent that the fumes make the entire neighborhood go blind.
Or they have a good mood.
It's made from plums or grapes, but basically any fruit can be used. Apricots, raspberries, mulberries, pears, apples, quince,
and even walnuts.
An edible substance, a rakia can be made from it. Now, seeing a great deal of Balkan national character was the result of defiance to the Ottoman occupation, especially the trait of rebellious defiance to authority, also known as inat, Rakia quickly rose in the ranks to become Inat's strongest soldier. Let's say the local commissioner asks you, why are you transporting so many barrels of overripe plums to your friend's shed? Why, it's for jam for winter, you
Of
moron.
course.
What kind of question even is that? Want us to die from scurvy? Wink, wink. Okay, so your children are being stolen and brainwashed to be soldiers in the Sultan's army or concubine slaves in his hand.
Oh my God. So the mystery is that the drink that defined the Balkans is rakia, the spirits. Okay. Okay, you guys, thank you for spending this time with me. Peter wrote, I tried to craft stuff for a journal exchange. That is wonderful, Peter. I'm so happy you continue with your activity and with making of the arts journal, and I look forward to see your next video. I just saw your video because I was sending the postcards and I needed some background video noise on the house, and I listened to it, and you sound happy that you received this cuttings from the people. So thank you so much for joining me. I see that my dog is still well asleep. This means that the walk was really good, and this makes me happy. Now I will go and wait, what time is it? It is 5:30. No, it is 3:30 in the afternoon. I will go and continue to doing some house chores and get ready for the weekend, baby. The weekend. Ta-da! The weekend. Bye bye.